I found the envelope tucked between the couch cushions, cream-colored, thick, the kind of stationery you use when you're saying something you don't want to text. My heart knew before my head caught up. Something about the way it was hidden, half-forgotten, like a secret trying to suffocate itself. And when I slid it out and saw the name on the return address, Dr. Adam Keller, my stomach dropped so hard it felt like I left it behind. Adam was our couple's therapist. I should back up. My name's Daniel. I'm 42. I thought I was happily married to Rebecca, Becca, to everyone who loved her. We met at a 4th of July barbecue 12 years ago. She stole my beer by mistake, laughed, apologized, then stole my heart on purpose. I wasn't looking for anything that day. I wasn't much looking for anything at all. I just moved back home after my dad passed, trying to figure out how to stitch my life together after grief took a sledgehammer to it. Becca was like sunlight in human form. All freckles and quick smiles and a way of looking at you that made you feel like you were the only man in the world worth seeing. She said I was solid, dependable. That being with me felt like holding onto the bottom of a tree during a hurricane. We got married 3 years later. It wasn't perfect, but whose marriage is? The cracks didn't show all at once. They crept in quiet. Busy work schedules, mismatched expectations, fights about nothing that somehow became everything. After one particularly bad Christmas where she cried into the mashed potatoes and I slept on the couch, we agreed to therapy. Couples counseling, to be exact. Entered Dr. Adam Keller. Early 40s, sandy brown hair, expensive loafers, a voice that could have been made in a lab to sound soothing but authoritative. At first, I liked him. He didn't pick sides. He asked good questions. He made me believe that maybe, just maybe, we could fix what we were breaking. We started seeing him weekly. At least, I thought we did. Over time, sessions felt off. Becca showed up early, stayed late. Sometimes I'd catch them laughing about something just before I entered the room. Once, I heard him say her name in a tone that set something low and cold rattling around inside my chest. But I told myself not to be paranoid. After all, this was therapy. Vulnerability. Trust. They were supposed to connect. That's how the healing happened, right? It was around that time that Becca started pulling away at home. Small things at first, turning her phone face down whenever I walked into the room. Guarded smiles. Less touch. More sighs that ended in silence. And then, one Thursday night, she didn't come home until after midnight. She said the session ran late, that she needed air and space. I believed her. I wanted to believe her so badly it hurt. The envelope in the couch was postmarked 2 weeks earlier. The handwriting on the front was unmistakably Adam's. I'd seen enough of his scribbled notes and appointment cards to recognize it. No stamp, just hand-delivered. I held it for a long time before I opened it, bracing myself like it might detonate the second I looked inside. Inside was a letter. Short, direct, shattering. Becca, I can't keep pretending this is professional anymore. Being around you is making it impossible to do my job ethically. I don't want to hide how I feel. I can't. Tell him soon. Please. Adam. No dates. No signature flourish. Just those cold, typed words and my world caving in around them. I sat there on the couch, holding the pieces of my life between my fingers, while Becca hummed in the kitchen, completely unaware that the bomb she planted had finally gone off. I didn't confront her right away. I couldn't. It's funny, people think rage comes first. But it doesn't. Not really. It's disbelief. A slow, sick crawl through your brain as you try to rearrange the facts into a story where this isn't happening. I thought maybe there was a mistake. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe. But deep down I knew. I knew the way you know when a storm is coming. Even if the sky looks blue, you feel it in your bones first. And mine were screaming. I put the envelope back exactly where I found it. Tucked it in deep. Because I needed to know more. I needed to catch the truth in the act. And part of me, God help me, still needed her to tell me herself. That night, I lay in bed next to the woman I built my life around, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing, steady, content, while I stared at the ceiling and felt the first tremors of the earthquake to come. I wasn't going to survive this untouched. But maybe, just maybe, I could survive it more honest than I'd ever been before. And that was the beginning. The end hadn't even started yet. The next morning, Becca was all smiles and Sunday pancakes. She asked if I wanted blueberries in mine, the way she always did, soft, domestic, familiar. Like the night before hadn't cracked something wide open between us. Like we were still the couple in the stock photos who laughed over brunch and solved arguments with forehead kisses. I told her I wasn't hungry. She looked surprised, but shrugged it off, humming to herself as she flipped pancakes, the spatula tapping against the pan like a ticking clock. I spent that whole day watching her. Not like a husband. Like a stranger. Like someone trying to memorize a crime scene before the evidence disappeared. The tilt of her head when she laughed. The way she twirled her hair around her finger when she was lost in thought. God, I knew all her tells. I knew her. At least, I thought I did. And the worst part? I wanted to still know her. I wanted to be wrong. By Monday, I couldn't sit with it anymore. I didn't stage some dramatic showdown. Didn't scream or throw the envelope across the kitchen table. That would have been easier, maybe. Cleaner. Instead, I asked if she wanted to go to therapy early. To check in, I said. Get a little extra time. She looked at me, really looked, and I saw it. That flash of panic she tried to swallow down with a smile. But she agreed. We drove separately. She said she had errands afterward. I nodded, pretending not to see the way her hands trembled when she picked up her purse. The waiting room at Dr. Keller's office was small, beige walls, a ficus plant that had seen better days, a rack of outdated magazines nobody touched. I sat there while she went in first, just like always. A private prep chat, Keller had called it once. To help them calibrate. I used to think it was thoughtful. Now I knew better. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. I stood up and walked to the door, the one that led to his office. It wasn't locked. It should have been. Private sessions always were. When I opened it, the first thing I saw wasn't them touching. Wasn't some dramatic soap opera embrace. It was the way they looked at each other. Like no one else existed. She was sitting across from him, knees turned inward, hands clutched in her lap. He was leaning forward, elbows on his thighs, looking at her the way a man looks at someone he thinks he's about to save. Or maybe ruin. And in that moment, I realized something terrible. She didn't look afraid. She looked relieved. As if keeping the secret had been the real burden. It was me who startled them, a cough I couldn't swallow back, a shift of my shoe against the carpet. Two heads snapped toward me, two faces draining of color. Adam stood up too fast, papers spilling off his lap. Becca stayed frozen, mouth parted like she wanted to say my name and just couldn't. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope. Held it up between two fingers, like an indictment. Her eyes flickered to it. His too. Silence stretched so long I could hear the second hand ticking on the cheap wall clock. Finally, Adam spoke. Not an apology. Not an explanation. Just a soft, pathetic, Dan, let's sit down and talk about this. Like I was the patient now. Like I was the unstable one for catching them in their glass house. Becca finally stood, slow, like the floor might collapse, and reached toward me. I stepped back. The whole thing lasted maybe 20 seconds. It felt like 20 years. Then I turned and left, the doors swinging shut behind me on whatever they thought they were. I drove straight to the river. Not to jump. Not to scream. Just to breathe. There's something about water, big, open water, that makes you realize how small you are. How even your biggest heartbreak is just a ripple compared to the vast, uncaring tide. I sat on the hood of my car until the sun went down, thinking about how easily a life can split right down the middle. Not with a bang. Not with betrayal shouted in the streets. But with a letter slipped between two couch cushions, and a wife who chose to hand her heart to someone else while you were busy fighting for her. By the time I drove home, the house felt different. Not haunted. Just hollow. Like the moment you realize you've been living in a home that someone else had already left, long before the door ever slammed shut. I slept on the couch that night, more out of principle than comfort. And as I lay there staring at the ceiling, I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to bargain. If she wanted out, she already had both feet out the door. All that was left now was deciding how clean the break was going to be, and whether I had the strength to walk away from a life that, for a long time, felt like the only thing keeping me upright. The next morning, she was waiting for me at the kitchen table. No makeup. No coffee cup cradled between her hands like a shield. Just Becca, raw, small, looking like the woman I first fell in love with and a stranger I couldn't quite recognize anymore. I didn't sit. I stayed standing in the doorway, arms crossed over my chest like I could hold myself together with posture alone. She spoke first. "I'm sorry," she said. 2 words. Small words. Words that hit like pebbles against a collapsing building. I didn't answer. I just waited watching her pick at the edge of the table like she could scratch her way into another universe, one where none of this had happened. I didn't plan for it, she said, her voice thin. It just had happened. I almost laughed. That line, the oldest one in the book, but I didn't interrupt. I wanted to hear the full eulogy for what used to be us. I felt invisible, she said, swallowing hard. Not because of you. You were always steady, always there. But somewhere along the way, I started feeling like a piece of furniture in my own life. Like I was background. I let the words sink in, heavy and bitter. I thought therapy would help, she said. At first it did. Talking to someone about us, about everything, it made me feel seen again. And then, in a voice so quiet I almost missed it. And he made me feel alive. There it was. The knife, sliding in slow. She wasn't talking about me. She was talking about him. I finally spoke then. Voice steady, even though my hands were trembling. You fell in love with our therapist. Her face crumpled. Not dramatically. Not in a way meant to win pity. Just honest, brutal collapse. I don't know if it was love, she said. Maybe it was just escape. Maybe it was just feeling wanted. Feeling important again. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to shut it out. Trying to breathe through the part where my ribs felt too tight to hold anything but rage. You could have told me, I said. You could have ended it before you gutted us like this. She nodded, tears slipping down her face, but I didn't move to wipe them away. That part of me, the part that comforted her first, even when I was the one bleeding, was dead now. I was a coward, she whispered. I didn't argue. You deserved better, she said. You're damn right, I said quietly. We sat there a long time. Her weeping softly, me standing there, hollowed out. Eventually, she pushed something across the table toward me. Keys. To the house. I'll move out, she said. Tonight. I didn't argue that either. Because here's the thing they don't tell you about heartbreak. It doesn't explode. It erodes. Slow and steady, like water wearing down stone. And by the time it finally crumbles, the pieces are so worn down you hardly recognize them as parts of yourself anymore. She left that night. No grand speeches. No desperate pleas. Just a duffel bag thrown into the back of her old Corolla, and one last look through the windshield before she pulled away. A look that said she knew exactly what she was losing, but not enough to stop it. The silence after she left was deafening. I didn't cry. Not that night. Not yet. I just sat in the kitchen, staring at the empty spot where her coffee cup used to be every morning, wondering how love could turn into absence so fast it left your head spinning. I wasn't angry yet. That would come later. First came the loneliness. The brutal, aching realization that sometimes, no matter how much history you have, people will still choose the spark that burns down the house over the steady light that keeps it warm. I slept in our bed that night, alone for the first time in years, with the covers pulled up to my chin and the smell of her shampoo still clinging to the pillows. It felt like sleeping in a ghost. And somewhere around 3 a.m., staring into the dark, I realized something that both hurt and healed all at once. She was never lost. She chose to walk away. And now, it was my turn to choose, too. Choose myself. Choose survival. Choose the long, slow climb back out of the hole she left behind. And damn it, I was going to make that climb. Even if it killed me. You'd think that would be the end of it. You find the letter. You catch them in the act. She moves out. You pick up the pieces, and life, somehow, painfully, marches on. But life's funny like that. It doesn't let you heal on schedule. Sometimes it rips the wound wider just when you think it's finally scabbed over. 2 weeks after Becca left, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. I was in that phase of grief where every unknown number feels like another grenade someone lobs over your fence. But something, maybe stubbornness, maybe stupidity, made me swipe accept. It was a woman's voice. Soft. Nervous. Hi. Is this Daniel Carter? I said it was. My name's Melissa. I, used to see Dr. Keller too. Her voice broke on the name. Keller, like it was something sour she had to spit out. I know this is strange, she said, but can we meet? It's about Adam. And your wife. I didn't want to. God, everything inside me screamed to hang up, crawl back into my bubble of miserable peace, and pretend none of it mattered anymore. But I agreed. Because some part of me knew the story wasn't finished. Not yet. We met at a small diner off the highway, the kind of place where the coffee tastes like regret and the booths are cracked from decades of weight they were never meant to carry. Melissa was already there when I arrived. Late 30s, plain sweatshirt, hair pulled back like she hadn't bothered pretending to care what she looked like anymore. Her hand shook when she reached for her mug. "I almost didn't come," she said, voice low. "But you deserve to know." She didn't dance around it. Didn't give me time to brace. She just dropped it, clean and fast. "Adam's done this before." I blinked. "Done what?" "Started affairs with patients," she said. "Specifically women he saw in couples therapy. Vulnerable women. Women whose marriages were already cracking." My stomach twisted. "You're saying he preys on them?" She nodded. "It's a pattern. He crosses lines under the guise of support. Makes them feel special. Needed. It happened to me, too." I sat back hard against the booth. All the moments I thought were just our failure, our weakness, started rearranging themselves into something uglier. Something manipulated. Melissa slid a folder across the table. Inside were emails, screenshots, messages from other women, stories that all sounded painfully familiar, the extra sessions, the late-night calls to check in, the slow, subtle erosion of boundaries until trust turned into something else entirely. Some had filed complaints. Most didn't bother. Because who wants to admit you got played by the person you went to for help? I closed the folder, hands trembling. It wasn't an excuse for what Becca had done, but it sure as hell was a context I didn't have before. "He finds cracks," Melissa said quietly. "And he pulls." I stared at the chipped ceramic mug in front of me, feeling the full weight of it settle into my chest. Maybe Becca was unhappy. Maybe she was vulnerable. But Adam saw that. And instead of helping her heal, he handed her a match and pointed at the life we built together like it was kindling. When I finally looked up, Melissa was watching me with something like pity. "You're not alone," she said. "You were never alone in this." I thanked her, paid for her coffee, drove home in silence. No radio, no distractions, just the gnawing ache of truth rolling around in my gut like broken glass. That night, I sat in my living room, staring at the folder Melissa had given me, and realized something else. Adam Keller wasn't just a man who crossed a line. He was a man who hunted the people who trusted him most. And Becca? She wasn't his first casualty. Maybe not even his worst. But she was mine. I spent the next few days thinking, turning it all over in my head like a stone I couldn't find the smooth side of. And then I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit here and bleed quietly while that man kept hurting people. I wasn't going to be another silent casualty. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. About finally standing up and saying, "This happened, and it wasn't okay." So I picked up the phone, called the licensing board, reported everything, his name, his behavior, the proof Melissa gave me. I haven't heard back yet. Maybe I won't, but saying it out loud was its own kind of beginning. I don't know what's going to happen yet. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But for the first time since the night I found that letter wedged into our couch cushions, I finally felt something shift inside me. Not rage. Not grief. Something quieter. Stronger. Hope. Hope that maybe the next man who sits in that waiting room, clutching the pieces of his life, won't have to pick up the shards alone. Hope that maybe, just maybe, healing could start somewhere. Even here. Even now. Even with a story like mine. 3 weeks after I filed the complaint, life started to stretch itself back into something almost recognizable. Not better. Not fixed. Just breathable. I went back to work. Stopped flinching when the mail came. Ate real meals again, even if most of them were microwavable and eaten standing over the sink. Grief isn't one big tidal wave, it's 1,000 tiny ones. Sometimes it hits you when you're brushing your teeth or when a song comes on the radio. Other times it sneaks up when you least expect it, like reaching for a second wine glass without thinking and realizing there's no one there to hand it to anymore. But I was getting through it, one cracked day at a time. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, a letter showed up. Plain envelope. No return address. I almost tossed it. Junk mail, maybe. Or worse, more salt poured on a wound barely scabbed over. But something made me open it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. And it wasn't from Adam. It wasn't from Melissa. It was from Becca. Her handwriting was unmistakable, tight, slanted to the right, like she was always halfway to running out of the room. I sat down hard at the kitchen table, the one we'd picked out together at some flea market years ago, and started to read. "Daniel, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I wouldn't blame you if you threw this away without reading it. But I'm writing because there are some things I should have said when I still had the right to stand in front of you and say them out loud. I didn't leave because you weren't enough. I left because I was too broken to see what enough even looked like. You gave me a life that was safe, steady, beautiful, and I mistook peace for boredom, comfort for chains. That wasn't your fault. That was mine. I was easy prey for someone like Adam. Someone who made chaos feel like passion. Someone who made me mistake attention for love. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect understanding. I just want you to know, it wasn't you. You didn't fail me. I failed myself. And in the wreckage of that failure, I dragged you down too. I've started therapy again. Real therapy. With someone who doesn't blur the lines. I'm trying to figure out how to live with the part of myself that self-destructs even when everything is good. You deserve better. You still do. Please don't let this harden you. Please don't let my mistakes steal the kindness I fell in love with. I hope you find someone who sees you the way you deserve to be seen. Not as a safe harbor, but as a home. I'm sorry. Becca. I didn't realize I was crying until the ink on the paper started to blur. Not angry tears. Not even sad ones. Just release. Because sometimes the hardest part isn't losing someone. It's wondering if they ever really saw you at all. And for the first time, through all the rubble and broken promises, I realized Becca had seen me. She just hadn't been ready for what she saw. That night, I folded the letter carefully, placed it in a drawer I didn't open very often, and sat outside on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the stars appear one by one. It didn't fix everything. It didn't erase the hurt. But it softened it. And sometimes, that's all you can ask for. Softness where there was once only ache. Forgiveness. Not for her. Not yet. But for myself. For trusting. For believing. For loving the best way I knew how. Even when it wasn't enough to save us. I didn't text her. Didn't call. Didn't respond at all. Some things deserve to stay ended. Not out of spite. Out of respect. For what was real. And for what never would be again. Spring came late that year. The kind of spring where the air still carried the bite of winter in the mornings, and you had to squint to see the first green shoots pushing stubbornly through the frozen ground. But they came anyway. And so did I. Healing isn't a straight line, it's a spiral. You think you're done hurting, then something random, a smell, a song, a memory you didn't know was still tucked away, yanks you back under for a while. But every time, the drowning got a little shorter, a little easier to climb back out of. It wasn't about forgetting Becca or Adam or what happened in that sterile, beige therapy office. It was about reclaiming the parts of myself that had gotten twisted up in their choices. The man who laughed without checking if anyone was watching. The man who loved fiercely without second-guessing his own worth. The man who deserved loyalty not because he demanded it, but because he offered it first, without hesitation. About 2 months after Becca's letter, I started making small changes. Got a dog. A scrappy mutt with one ear that wouldn't stand up straight, and a bark that sounded like he was still learning how. I named him Murphy. He slept at the foot of the bed like he was guarding something precious. Maybe he was. I sold the house, too. Not because I couldn't bear the memories, but because it felt like trying to live in a museum exhibit of a life that wasn't mine anymore. I found a little place on the edge of town. Smaller. Simpler. Sunlight poured through the windows in the morning like it was apologizing for being gone so long. I started cooking again. Not for anyone else, just for me. Pancakes on Sunday mornings. Exactly the way I like them. No blueberries. I even went back to therapy. Real therapy. Alone this time. The first session, the new therapist, a woman with kind eyes and an office full of crooked bookshelves, asked me what I wanted to work on. I thought about it for a long time. Then said, I want to stop thinking that being left means I wasn't enough. She smiled. Not the patronizing kind, but the kind that said, yeah, that's a good place to start. Somewhere in all those sessions, all those hard conversations with myself, I realized something I hadn't seen before. Becca didn't leave because I was unworthy. She left because she didn't know how to love anything that didn't set her heart on fire in chaos. And Adam? Adam wasn't a better man. He was just the easier mirror. He reflected back the parts of her that didn't want to be saved, only seen. I wanted a partner. She wanted a witness. Those are two very different things. And that wasn't my failure. It was just the truth. One afternoon in early May, I found myself walking Murphy along the river. The same river where I'd sat on the hood of my car, shell-shocked, months before. The water moved slow and sure. Indifferent. Unbothered. Healing. Just like me. I sat on the bench overlooking the bend in the river and realized, for the first time in a long time, I didn't miss her anymore. Not because the love was erased, but because I'd finally put it where it belonged. In the past. A beautiful chapter. A hard lesson. A part of my story, not the whole book. I watched the sunlight skip over the water and thought about how life doesn't warn you when a chapter is about to end. It just closes the door, and you figure it out from there. Some people stay. Some people leave. Some people burn the whole house down. And some people, the lucky ones, they rebuild. Stronger, wiser, wide open, waiting not for another storm, but for the quiet, steady miracle of a new day. And me? I was already standing in it.